Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver, and another episode of The Shrink and the Pundit, where I talk with Dr. Keith Witt about all things integral. This week, the evolutionary power of a pandemic and life in lockdown. Here's Keith and me. So how you doing? Here we are in the year of the plague and the age of the shutdown, right in the thick of it here. What is this, April 17th?
A month into shelter in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember once reading a piece that this guy wrote. Now, I'm not remembering his name, on the second tier functioning. He said in the second tier, you can change direction at high velocities. And I feel like that everybody's being forced to change direction at high velocities, including me. And so I'm observing the world and adjusting. And my life really hasn't changed that much compared to quite a lot of other people.
Right. Yeah, same here. You know, I was sheltering in place anyway.
Yeah.
If you want to know the truth.
Right. Shelter in place as preferred lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, first of all, the one observation I'd make about this is that thank God for the internet.
Yes.
I mean, can you believe what's going on in terms of people connecting and figuring it out and, doing the best we can with this thing? It's not face-to-face. It lacks a certain something. Mm-hmm. But if we're, like you and I talked about the morphic field an episode or two ago when we talked about Rupert Sheldrake. Mm-hmm. And, is there a non-local connection that actually is happening? Is there something that's bigger than just pixels on the screen in terms of we space and loosh and that, and I think there is. I think we're, again, figuring it out. Mm-hmm. And so I want to notice that.
Yeah, I feel it. I definitely feel it. And how are you doing? I mean, okay, so you were in sheltering in place, but still it's quite different.
Yeah, it is. And, what's different is actually what we're talking about with this morphic field and just the field of suffering that is, it's always there. People are always dying and there's always sickness and suffering. Mm-hmm. But this sort of thing brings it into stark relief.
Yeah.
And, and one of the things that's, I think, evolutionarily powerful about it is that it's the thing that's in stark relief that the whole world is looking at. And we're having this world-centric moment that's unprecedented, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it affects everybody. Mm-hmm. And plus we have this skin of technological brain that we've built up around the planet where we're all just checking in on everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, again, in terms of the morphic field, something that will not be completely undone. We'll forget about it. We'll go a little less conscious, but, there's a net gain to that sort of thing.
That's my hope. In the midst of this whole world-centric moment where everyone gets that we all need to understand the pandemic is a worldwide threat and a worldwide phenomena. Seeing the Trump administration deny money to the World Health Organization, that I'm assuming that the 80% of the people that heard that, they didn't like it. Maybe 75%. Even some Trump supporters, even though they'll still vote for him, I don't think they liked that.
Yeah, I see his approval ratings are down 6 points in the last couple of days.
Oh, that's good.
And that's from a pretty stubborn level of mid-40s.
Yeah, right.
And recently up into almost 50, and we're talking about Gallup. But I think that I think of this joke. I have to just share it. It's I put it on one of my podcasts.
Share jokes. Yeah.
I put it on one of my podcasts. It's some young comedian. I'm forgetting his name. Actually, it's Al Capone. Actually, is his name, and he talks about Trump, and he said America needs 40,000 ventilators. And Trump is like, 30,000 ventilators. What do you need 20,000 ventilators for?
Hey.
So, I think just in general, there's a tiredness of the bullshit artist that this again brings into stark relief, because we're not talking about, gender relations or sexism. We're talking about a hard thing, a science thing. Yeah. And, it does show where that's a thin gruel for a lot of people and a lot of independents. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I initially, when all this went down, I thought, well, we're going to have shared sacrifice. This is a lot like World War II. And now recently I began to feel it's beginning to be more reminiscent to me of Vietnam. Because in Vietnam, there was a sense of shared threat, at least to me as a teenage boy. And every night on the news, there were videos of people suffering in Vietnam. It was a standard. It was the first war that was on TV. And the stimulus of the war on TV, plus that underlying pressure on all of us, we're going to have to go fight there maybe. It might get us. Probably won't get us, but might get us. It's been very similar to that. And I'm kind of, this is where I'm getting encouraged. Mm-hmm. Because that's what drove a lot of the most
it brought in postmodernism. It's one of the things. It brought in its new stage of human history.
Like punctuated equilibrium. There was a surge towards postmodernism.
Yeah.
And, another thing that's
it had started. We had the beatniks, and we had World War II essentially got rid of all the triumphal narratives.
Yeah, that's true.
By the Vietnam War, that really brought that on, and I think actually we're seeing here certainly a continuation of that, and probably a move into integral if we thought it through. But clearly, if green or postmodern progressive is the sensitive self, as Claire Graves described it, what we're seeing in terms of the emergency rooms and the doctors and the nurses and the first responders and the people themselves suffering and the people who have no, shelter in place option. And all of this stuff, this has always been happening, only much worse, actually.
Yes.
What's true now is that we see it. Mm-hmm. And we become ever more sensitized to it. And that's, they're dripping with it on MSNBC, right. But Fox is doing it too. Mm-hmm. And, Fox has there's clearly a different spin on things. But in terms of the human drama, there's a big, and this is another thing I'm noticing that I think is evolutionarily powerful, is just a collective action in this country. Not just action, but also mentally.
Yeah, mental action.
In the left-hand quadrants.
Yeah.
That I find astonishing. When you think of where we were 2 months ago, where we were 6 weeks ago, when I was traveling down to my sister's in Orlando, Florida, whatever it was, a month ago. Without a mask. And now, you don't walk out in the street without a mask. In California, you actually literally don't, do you?
Well, in Santa Barbara, it's looser because Santa Barbara got on the shelter in place quickly. So in this area, there have been very few cases, only a couple of deaths. Downtown, you wear masks, but Becky, I showed you these pictures. Becky and I go on the trails in the morning, and I come and do remote sessions. And my window is basically the news and the people that I'm working with.
Right.
One interesting thing that I'm noticing, Jeff, is that a lot of the people I work with, particularly the women, are only listening to the amount of the news that they need to be informed and safe. And they're resisting outrage. They're saying, I'm thinking, these are all exit green people. And I think,
hallelujah.
I think one thing about this is it's going to push a lot of exit green people into teal, because outrage, 3 years, people have had it with outrage. Like I started feeling outraged, and I immediately want to transition into a deeper understanding. And I've seen that spontaneously arising from a lot of people that a lot of green people that I'm working with, and I'm encouraged by that. And I'm wondering if there's some kind of national effect on that. Of course, I don't have any data about it other than my own practice, but it's quite striking.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's sort of part and parcel with this tiredness of the Trump show.
Yeah.
Because he's an outrage machine, and I get tired of having my nervous system played.
Yeah, me too.
And I think, this, and then when you add this coronavirus, it's like enough already. I want to keep informed. I'm a responsible citizen, and I want to be responsible to myself and my loved ones. So I'll check in. I want to know what's going on. But do I want to marinate in that? No.
No, I don't.
Much rather watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. Much rather actually watch Hitler's Circle of Evil, which is what I've been watching on Netflix. It's a documentary about the development of the Nazis. And
so,
I prefer that.
Any parallels? See any parallels?
Well, I mean, if any idea that we're slipping into fascism in the way that they did then is watch it and you'll say, please, no.
Not going to happen.
No. But you can see that there's a certain autocratic archetype.
Yes,
it's like Chuck was watching it with me last night, and they were talking about how they would manage the news and just sort of fight. They're fighters,
right.
And Chuck was like, yes, it's like as if Trump had studied this or watched this, and yet we know that he's famously unread about anything.
It's an archetype.
And it turns out it's just the autocrat archetype.
Yeah.
It's what you do. You undermine the opponent, you spin the news, you confuse, you keep everybody's attention on you, you keep your staff, on their heels. But in terms of what's going on now, I'm most encouraged by the South Korea. I think we all are, right?
Wasn't that
the South
great?
Korea example where they were on top of it with the testing. The testing's key to the city. Yeah. And, clearly I think we have come to this many weeks or maybe 2 months too late. Mm-hmm. Will we learn something? Will the world be that much more ready for a pandemic? I mean, it's astonishing that I couldn't get face masks or gloves or hand sanitizer. I don't think, we're going to make that mistake again. And here's actually, if you want to know, sort of historical parallels, it's like shit comes at you. Mm-hmm. This is true for you for us as individuals and as cultures. That shit comes out of left field and nobody's ever ready.
Yeah, right.
And then you become ready and then the next thing hits.
In the 1918 flu, there were more deaths with the second wave of the flu than with the first one. And what I'm noticing about this thing is that, that we've had a lot of flu seasons. But I've never been in a flu season where people are writing articles about what happens to your body when you have the flu, where people are showing pictures of the flu virus. And I think that there is this thing around the world now where everybody now has this archetype of what do we do when the deadly virus strikes. And, we've all practiced it now. We've all done the drill. South Korea literally did a drill in December before it hit in Seoul. And so one thing about being prepared for a pandemic is that in our consciousness, in our unconscious, we're not just thinking about ourselves, about our country. We're always thinking about the world. The federal agency that was disbanded, that was supposed to track down, that was designed to track down and stop these internationally. I don't think that's going to be defunded again. In Brazil, Bolsonaro now is being somewhat isolated by the governors, just like in the United States, because he's saying to Sao Paulo, go and do business and never mind about this. Basically saying, as Trump suggested in one of his meetings that was leaked, let it flood through the country. Let the people who are going to die. Let everything be overwhelmed for a few months, and then let's get back to business because that's what's best for Trump and his guys.
Yeah.
One of my favorite statistics out of that is while Trump is saying don't wear masks, the Trump administration sent away to South Korea for 3,500 masks for the Trump administration. That they were stockpiling masks while they were telling everybody. And it's not like I'm outraged about that, though I am, of course. What I'm seeing is this the classism double standard that is now on more and more display. The disproportionate amount of blacks that are dying from this. The disproportionate portion of healthcare, the utter failure to, as far as I can see, of a for-profit healthcare system. Because why haven't we been having a lot of stockpiling of protective gear? Why haven't we been having widespread tests? Because the people that run all of those systems, if I'm not personally tasked and if I'm not going to make a lot of money for my company, I'm not going to do it. I mean, nobody's going to step up and say, I'm going to sacrifice my company for the highest good. That's the government's job. So if the government doesn't do it, then there's a lot of people pointing at each other and nothing gets done. That's the for-profit health care system. And frankly, seeing it shown to be so much less effective, it's my hope that if we have the perfect storm, in a good way, Democratic president, Democratic both houses, that there might be some great society type stuff that might come out of this. And if it did, that would be an amazing.
Yeah. Well, let me just point out that it has. I mean, we had a Republican president and Senate vote for a $2 trillion bailout.
That's true.
That is, and it's an election year, Keith.
Yeah.
There's going to be all kinds of stories about who did what, and there's a lot of political spin around all of this. And I think that both sides, considering our two-party system, would be irresponsible not to spin everything they can their way. So I'm not complaining about it necessarily.
Yeah, right.
I just want to notice it.
Yeah.
And also that when you have, so this bailout will be critiqued all sorts of ways, some of which I may believe, I don't know. I'm a lot of don't know mind about this shit anymore. But what I do know is that in times of stress and in times of strife like this coronavirus, that the whole country turned to the government.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah,
Welcome to the next stage of human history where it's just default. And again, it's because the culture war is fought on these extremes of the liberals and the traditionalists. And then the poor modernists are pulled both ways, and they're not as ideological, and they just want to keep the trains running on time, and they're scientific and rational. Right. But this is the one time where they get to win.
Yeah. And green too. Green gets to win because the more and more the people that say let's take care of people are being empowered.
Yes.
And I think that's another driver to push green into exit green, because once green has always been suffered from being impotent. Okay, so once you give green power, green has to face its own reluctance to help out red and amber and orange. And so the people that are rising to the top are saying, hey, look, we're going to help everybody. And I don't care if it's a red rural state. If they're having a lot of problems, I suspect New York will be sending aid to South Dakota. Okay. And not for political reasons, but because we have stuff to give. We have an experience. Those kinds of gestures push green into teal. And so here's a couple other things. I've been noticing these other things happening around the lockdown that are kind of endearing. So here's one. Most of there's more domestic violence and crime now. That's been going up because of all this stuff. But in my practice, couples have been getting sweeter with each other. The people that work with me, they're staying home with their kids.
Yeah. And
they're getting their routines and they're not distracted. And even couples that were on the edge, I mean, there's one couple that I'm working with that actually might divorce when this goes down. But they're getting along better than they've got along in 10 years. So there's kind of a sweetness.
Yeah.
And another thing I'm noticing is an appreciation for schools. Because I talked to this 17-year-old who was just falling to pieces, and he said, I never realized how great it was to have a schedule where I went into a room and there was essentially a container that was designed to have me learn calculus or AP history. And I've worked with a lot of teachers. The teachers talk about tuning up their room so it's a container that's a learning environment. Well, that really has a significance, and that makes it a lot easier for kids to learn if you got a teacher who's doing that. And the research on that has always been great. The good, if you have one great teacher, your income goes up after college. I mean, that's in your entire elementary school career. And so the significance of and the importance of that, as people try to homeschool their kids and try to get their kids to focus on a TV screen to try to figure out how to do algebra or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, and also here's a cool story that I heard from David Reardon. I think it was the Atlanta School District got a new superintendent, and she saw that the bad teachers couldn't be fired because of tenure, because of the teachers union. So she said that she wanted to double teachers' salaries. She wasn't dicking around. It was like, I'm going to go from like 60,000 to 120. But if you do it, you can't be in the teachers union, or you have to agree that you can get fired if you're not a good teacher, not unless a superior teacher. And the interesting thing about that to me is the teachers union wouldn't let that come to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going, okay, so I'm looking now at an entrenched interest that was putting a block to what I wanted to have happen for many years. My parents are both public school teachers. Double the salaries of teachers because they're so important. And so when you have something like this, it kind of disintegrates entrenched interests, which makes it a little bit more possible for us to reconfigure on a more complex level, which is what I think is happening.
Yes, I agree. It's sort of the collective version of conditioned mind. Yes. If you know what I mean. It's it's the automatic thinking that we do meditation to interrupt that. Yeah. And this is an interruption of that collectively. And we're going to rethink a lot of things.
So I've been noticing that otherwise credible people are making dire predictions. A Great Depression is going to happen. And I know in Bulgaria it's moving towards fascism. The head of the government has been given the power to suspend laws, which is dangerous. But otherwise credible people who are not alarmists are saying things like, well, the economy will never get back. The government will take control. And I'm wondering if that. What do you think about that? I feel like it's a reflection of that the morphic field of dread that is associated with the pandemic.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that first of all, there's a dire prediction industry.
Oh, that's right.
So, there's always an appetite for that. And part of it is because things go to shit in samsara, in this world. And, if you look at history, if you look at history, bored,
everything goes to shit.
Well, we all have our apocalypse. The apocalypse is assured. One death per person, a very stubborn death rate here. That's right. But, what I think Integral can show us is that there is also an updraft of complexity and resilience and the ability to get back on track. And even if you look at, this is another thing from this documentary, if you look at how Europe was decimated in World War II and how Japan.
Yeah.
And then, 10 years later, we're buying their cars and everybody's, they're rocking and rolling again. That's right. And modernity is astonishingly resilient. And we're not, so I go on that side.
Me too.
And I also see that there's, there's aside from the asteroid hitting or some life condition like that, where, it's like Stephen King's book, The Stand, where the plague comes through, but it kills 99% of the people in 2 days.
That's right.
I mean,
a lot of science fiction books written about that.
Yeah, exactly. And if that happens, then all bets are off. But aside from that, we muddle through, and there's, new baselines that we don't sink beneath. Mm-hmm. It's like nobody's advocating for chattel slavery or cannibalism. You don't rule that out when there's that, what is that dark spot in the sky, or is this just another, dire prediction factory, but where, the astronomers can't see whether or not an asteroid is heading our direction.
Oh, yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't rule anything out, but, basic normal staying within the 90-yard lines, I think we're going to be fine.
I think so.
I mean, and that's not to, diminish. And this is where green comes in, and my, good green sensitivity. People are going to suffer, including you and me.
I have a client who's on her 4th week of COVID. This is a client of mine. Okay, and she got it a month ago. It's the concept of a novel virus. One thing that's coming out of this around health circles is about immune function. A lot of Becky and I have been talking about this a lot. Really the best at this point, until there's a vaccine, the best defense around this thing is to have a healthy immune system. Well, what are the things that create healthy immune systems? Not things that are particularly widely known. And as particularly when people talk about stress reduction, they're not talking about, I want to do stress reduction so I'll have a more robust immune system. Right. I want to get better sleep. So I want to not argue so much with my wife. But all those things put together give you a more robust immune system. Again, this is now more part of the general dialogue than I've known.
Totally. No, let me count the ways we're becoming more intelligent. Really, in terms of viral, first of all, let me just pause there. What the fuck is a virus?
Yeah.
I mean, what is this thing? It's not really alive. It doesn't metabolize. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't poop. It doesn't, it's this thing. It multiplies and gets in your DNA. And I mean, again, this life force, Keith, I don't know what to make of it.
It's life. I was talking to my son about it. We just graduated from medical school.
Oh, right.
So, he's going to do his residency in Portland, where they're having, I don't know if they'll probably still be struggling with this when he starts. He said there's debate about whether viruses are life. And I go, come on. Come on, Ethan. Okay, here we are. You and I are conscious selves now, right? Okay, so we're directing our psychological and physiological processes at this moment, you and I. Okay, so how are we doing it? By how we sit, how we're drinking water, who we're hanging out with, how we're thinking, positive thoughts, negative thoughts. Okay, we're at the teetery top of a huge pyramid that goes all the way back down to the beginning of time, that we've included and transcended. And how we think and how we relate and how we manage, what conscious decisions we make, affects every single level, going all the way down until it's all the way down through life into non-life. Okay, in other words, I'm actually affecting the geology. We're affecting the geology of the planet individually. And so, is a virus alive? You bet it's alive. Is it being affected by me at this moment? All the viruses around me? Of course they're being affected by me, by decisions that I make. I mean, is it being affected by us intersubjectively? The viruses in our bodies are being affected by how we relate.
Oh, no. You're scaring me again, Keith. But it is spooky, isn't it? And it's worth noting, I think one of the things that's been most helpful to me about integral theory is that, the life exists down in the atomic and subatomic level, in the sense that atoms have 4 quadrants. They have an upper left, They have their interior world, individual. They have their world with each other. They exist in space, their actual material.
They have prehension, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So they have little tiny consciousnesses and little tiny choices that they make. And, so is a rock alive in the same way? No, but the atoms there are. And then the atoms become molecules, and the molecules become cells, and the cells become organisms. And those are holons that go up in complexity that end up, as far as we know, with us.
Becky,
a self-conscious holon.
Becky and I were walking, and she was saying, I wish there was a woman president, which a lot of people I know, including me, would like. And I said, but you're already president. You're a president of the United States of Becky. Like there are billions of little holons in you that have included and transcended up into your conscious self. And your conscious self, Becky, you're the president of the United States of Becky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's my friend Maria was reading to me from Bill Bryson's book, The Body. And, he's so good as a science writer, nonfiction writer. And he was just talking about, I forget the number, but the octobazillion atoms that have decided to come together and become you, me, and Becky, and everybody else. It's like, what's up with that? Really.
Yeah, that's the evolutionary impulse right there. That takes me back to I don't know. I keep thinking about this, and I know you got it from somewhere. But how do you create the collective works of
Shakespeare? Yeah,
take plasma at 13.8 billion years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and a little bit of a sidetrack, but speaking of women presidents, I have to say, as much as Trump pains me, I am happy that I don't have to witness the specter of Hillary Clinton trying to get a stimulus plan through Congress, and the necessary socialization of the economy that we've witnessed, being led by Republicans, is a bit of a relief. Let me just say that, and I think actually probably evolutionarily potent in the integration of left and right.
I've been finding that more and more since I've not been satisfied with outrage.
Yeah, good.
I've been finding myself more and more yearning for a renewal in the Republican Party. I would really like there to be a David Brooks, John McCain Republican Party. Romney Republican Party. And say one of the things that they did is they said, okay, one thing that we all agree about is we want to take care of babies and children. And so what they did is they got a bipartisan thing to have people visit single mothers every week, to provide resources and health care and so on for poor families, for children, just really radically expand, reduce or eliminate child abuse and child neglect. If that could go on for about 10 or 12 years, that generation of children would skew towards the progressive, because they would be non-traumatized. And non-traumatized kids tend to grow up into have been able to be contributing members of society and to be open to new ideas. And I was thinking, and if that happened, then the conservatives that would come out of that would be fine. Create a Republican Party out of people that are non-traumatized, that were supported as infants. And so I'm yearning for that system.
Yeah, well, good. Me too. Yeah. And if the trends of history continue, that will happen. It's inevitable. And now, how quickly, the zigs and zags of getting there, and all of the, culture war around getting there.
Yeah, good point.
But if you look at the childhood, wasn't even, you were raising kids to take care of you. That was
That's true.
for most of human history.
Was even recognized.
Yeah, adolescents, teenagers, these are even new constructs.
That's
and now
right.
we have this other new construct that people aren't really growing up till they're 26 or 27.
Yeah, extended.
Fair enough.
Right.
The world is sufficiently complex where we need that kind of acknowledgement of our development.
I like
and
that.
Actually, if you want to keep going, how about the 30s and the 40s and the 50s?
Yeah. Certainly, there's certainly definable periods.
Yeah.
And, there's 4 of them in adolescence. There's probably there's 7 or 8 of them up until 9 years old. Adolescence, first stage of adolescence is 9 to 13. Last stage is 18 to 22. The 20s are a crucial decade. I get distressed about the kids that get sidetracked or left behind at about adolescence. About 12, you see a wild diversions happening. I would really love to have that be a super focus of a culture.
Yeah. Well, there's where, we can look back in history and see the power of initiation into, at least physical adulthood.
Yeah.
That has been a pivot point in cultures of all times and places because it's so important, and we don't do it right.
The most popular school in Santa Barbara is Santa Barbara, as far as I know, is the Santa Barbara Middle School. And that was set together by this guy, I don't know, 40 years ago named Kent, who had this vision of initiation as an organizing principle of early adolescence. So, he took the best data of the day, got a bunch of dedicated teachers together and put together this school. It goes 6th to 9th grade. And the last thing that they do in the 9th grade is called rites of passage, where the kid gets up in front of the assembled student body and parents, and people speak for him or her. They speak about who they were and who they've become. I remember, and you just sit there and cry through the whole thing. When my son went through it, what are you going to do? And why is that so popular? Why are people willing to pay $30,000 to send their kid to junior high school, which is way more than I paid for any of my degrees? It's because we intuitively feel the need to bring that back into the culture.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in America, which is just, that's available to people that can pay $30,000 a year to send their kid to junior high school.
Yeah.
I want all the kids to have something.
Yeah, right on, Keith. Me too. I'd add a fire walk to that.
Oh my God! I don't want to do that. I mean, I get that would burn his feet. I don't want to do fire walking. I don't care what. Tony
you can't. You would never get parents to do that. But still, what you're talking about is deeply powerful. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And there's in traditional or particularly earlier pre-traditional societies, it was always some sort of a trial, a physical trial as well. And that's why, even that, Keith, to take kids to, I don't know how long it's going to be before this happens, but I do think it's inevitable. Kids will go and have adventures. Yeah. And there'll be, structures for that. And there'll be sort of safe dangers. I don't know. It's like a Outward Bound now.
I have kids that I work with that are part of institutionalized, like going down rivers for a month in the summer and so on. Also, an interesting thing, if you look in...
if every kid doesn't get to go down a serious river in a raft, then we're not doing it right. Yeah. Or some version of that.
Some version of that. Whatever lights them up.
Yes, exactly.
That. Yeah. This reminded me of something that you said earlier. When you're dealing with either a third world or tribal societies, you can track parasite load versus ethnocentrism and fear of the other and pervasiveness of travel in those environments. Okay. So, back in the hunter-gatherer days, tribes were so widely dispersed. It was like the American Indians. If there was some kind of COVID virus thing, would kill one tribe, but it wouldn't spread because tribes didn't interact with each other. In the third world, they do. But the difference here is that we're all connected via Zoom and via TV and so on. And so we're having the threat, but we're not having the same, and we're all having to shelter in place, in that sense, frightened of other people, not traveling. But I'm seeing more of a sense of world centricism and of communality. I'm calling my friends more often now than I did before, not less often.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's a function of the evolution of consciousness,
yes.
that the forces that previously would more disconnect groups actually are creating more connection.
Yeah.
That seems to be happening with my clients with their kid. The kids under 10, the parents are complaining like crazy, but a lot of the kids under 10 are really happy having dad home or mom home.
Wow.
Playing.
Isn't that interesting? You're right.
These kids are the behavior, some behavior problems. Sure, there are meltdowns and so on, but particularly for the kids under 8 or 9, they're even though they're missing school because they're friends and stuff, there's something that's pretty good for a lot of these kids being around mom and dad. Mom and dad are talking more about their kids than they did before in sessions. They're more hands-on about how what their kids' learning styles are, or getting their kids out. We don't have PE now, so now one of my clients, he said he got a program of couch to 5K, and he's doing it with his son. So they get up every morning and they do their intervals and stuff. And his son had some behavior problems, having fewer behavior problems. And I'm just wondering if at a certain level of consciousness, this kind of thing then somehow strengthens family bonds and cultural bonds.
Yes. That's fascinating. I'm sure this will be well studied. This, whatever it is, this year of the plague, this 3 months of shutdown, this whatever it is, what happened?
Right. What happened?
What happened to the kids?
Until there's a vaccine.
How many babies did we conceive? How many divorces? How many more or less? I'm just fascinated. It'll be, I'm sure, well studied.
I'm looking forward to that data. I am, and I'm hopefully, I know that this is a deadly disease. Okay, but I'm a fear type. I've always kind of lived with the specter of deadly disease all around. I remember when I was a kid, one of the reasons when I was a teenager, I was a vegetarian and I took vitamins is I didn't want to get a deadly disease.
Yes.
They were all over the place.
Yeah.
So this is kind of not a qualitatively different world.
Yeah, well, that disgust impulse, that fear impulse of getting contaminated is deep in the human psyche, of course. Very evolutionarily appropriate. But then there's us fear types. We get an extra dose.
You're beyond.
Yes.
Disgust, interestingly, is one of the latest, if not the latest, developing emotion. Disgust doesn't really come online until 4 or 5. Okay, and when it does, it comes online in 2 different ways. It comes online about being disgusted about stuff, like icky stuff, like poop and vomit and all that stuff.
Right.
But it also comes online around moral disgust, which are intimately connected. And in that sense, disgust, like shame, is one of the most intense social emotions, because we don't want to be morally disgusted with ourselves or with other people. And so that's a motivating force.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what's going to happen in terms of, do we hug anymore? Will we ever again? I'm going
to hug you the next time I see you, Jeff.
Well, there you go. Well,
I'll risk my life to hug my friend, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting because it was not so long ago that, I was walking down the street of the neighborhood we go to in Mexico and just bumping into people. And I love that. And going to restaurants, going to the grocery store, and avoiding Trader Joe's at certain times because it's shoulder to shoulder. Now I miss all that.
Me too. I remember, when I walked down the street before, to me, it was always pretty downtown. Often it was overwhelming in a good way, because I don't go out that much, and I'd see all the faces, and in each face I would see a Dostoevsky novel.
Yeah. Of course.
And the complexity and richness of the human experience.
Oh my God.
And now bringing it back to the current situation, I'm really hoping, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but there's a contrast between how people are being taken care of in different countries. Okay, and the extractive economy of the United States is in stark contrast to some of the even the hardest hit countries, even the Spain and Italy and so on. And I'm really hoping that there's a shift to we've been believing the big lies for so long in this country. I really want people to go, no, for profit healthcare, no, the insurance industry, no. The levels of poverty, even though that poverty's gone down, the how close to the edge that we allow so many people.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they have I'm hoping there's a general moral disgust that arises around that, as we see it displayed, throughout the crisis in one way or another. I'm hoping for that.
Yeah. Well, I expect that.
That's good.
That's the difference between, no, just kidding. But we can't unsee these things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like, one of the features of the green economy that is inevitably coming, short of the asteroid, is a greater egalitarianism in general and a raising of the baseline so that people who work in nursing homes make a living wage and they have a security, and that becomes a profession that is recognized and respected, and somebody could make a living and live a life doing it. And then it's like the teachers, Keith. It's like, okay, let's pay them well. And then the ones that are just not suited, they just can't do it.
Them, yeah.
All right. Well,
I think
we're
we've got
right?
as far as we can go today. On this whole thing. Though, who knows what's going to happen a month from now? I don't know.
I mean, if you look at a month ago, I wouldn't know what to expect.
The reason we're having this conversation is a month ago, you and I were going to talk about Sam Harris's book, Waking Up. We're going to talk about psychedelics, microdosing and macrodosing as forms of transformative experiences, alternative to psychotropic drugs. We were going to talk about the significance of transcendent experience in adult development. We were all hot to do that. I had the book all loaded. I was going to read it. And then all of a sudden, bam, here we are. 2 weeks ago, I gave you a call because I was lonely. And we were talking and we both realized we're going to have to talk about COVID.
There's no other topic right now.
No other topic.
And so we got to roll with it.
But I want to bring up one thing for our listeners, okay? And I know, by the way, I'm really appreciative of all the people that follow us. Every once in a while, I talk to somebody who says, I've seen every Shrinking Pundit, and I love them all, and I love you guys. And we love you guys, and we really appreciate it.
That's true.
So I want to just tell you guys this, and I hope you're all safe and comfortable and doing well, and Jeff and I are thinking about you. So Jeff and I are writing a book about Shrinking the Pundit, okay? We're taking transcripts of episodes, and we're commenting on them, and we're putting them together and stuff. And so you guys out there, if there's an episode that you really liked, or a segment that you really like, or some aspect of how Jeff and I do our thing you really like, could you please write us, write Jeff at Daily Evolver or Keith at drkeithwitt.com. You can leave comments. Let us know, because you can help us write this book.
Yeah. Well, here. Yeah, I'm fascinated and curious as well.
Yes.
So.
Well, right. Jeff, I always feel better talking to you. I feel good talking to you. Thank you.
Likewise, Keith. All right. All right. Love to all. See you next time.
Bye-bye.